5 years after the financial crisis started, regulators are still looking at ways to rein in risk-taking on Wall Street. One of their latest targets, executive bonuses. That's right, you heard it right, executives. They are not immune to the winds of change. Aaron Lucetti is here with this story. How much grumbling going on in the street about this one, Aaron?
Well, it's kind of a long, slow grumble. It's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
The Fed has been looking at this issue really since the financial crisis in 2009, 2010 coming out. They did a big paper in 2010 and 2011 about the perils of incentive compensation and how that could lead to very bad outcomes, bank blow-ups, financial crises, and so on. But since then, they've kind of gone underground and done most of their interaction just with the banks on a one-on-one basis, trying to get them to push their pay a little bit one way and the other. And the thing they're trying to do in this story that we highlight today is take some of the leverage out of the compensation plans, which means banks have sort of been in this cat and mouse game, and financial companies and more broadly companies across corporate America have sort of changed the way they've paid their top people and their valuable people over the years. First we had stock options, then the accounting watchdogs went after that and said, wait a second, this is kind of a free lunch here. Then you had restricted stock, which was sort of a response to that. And then some of the shareholder advocates said, well, this is really just kind of a free ticket, like you get the restricted stock and you really don't have to do anything to earn it over time. So what came out of that were these plans called the long-term incentive plans, or performance shares, where the executive gets some share grant that's restricted. They can't sell it or do anything with it, but the number of shares will fluctuate based on their performance. If they have a good 3 years after that, the 1,000 shares becomes 2,000. If they have a bad period, it becomes half of it. It becomes 500 or nothing. So there's a lot of built-in leverage, there's a lot of built-in incentive, but the Fed is worried that it'll cause them to swing for the fences and take big risks and end up blowing up their firm.
And what you noted in the story is that a lot of firms have started changing, right? I mean, it's started to change these policies.
Right. So the proxy season this year was very interesting because a lot of the mid-sized and larger regional banks came out and said, we've had to water down our incentive programs, taking the leverage down from 200% to 100 or 150 at the urging or the guidance of the Federal Reserve. So this is the first we've really seen, some of the rubber meeting the road on what the Fed wants to do on compensation.
Talking about, Capital One, Discover, right? Some of those guys. Who else
Discover, Capital One were big ones. Discover moved quite a bit and actually put in a kind of a substitute payment, sort of to cushion the blow to the executives who were losing some money on the upside. Some of the other banks that were in there included, well, first of all, it's important to note that Wells Fargo and Bank of America and some of the largest banks have these plans, but were already kind of low, didn't have them really levered up. So I think the Fed kind of got their message across to those larger banks earlier and didn't have to kind of knock it down. But a variety of banks, SunTrust was another one that came way down. So there were about 8 or 9 banks that came down this year, and about 10 banks that had already been kind of lower at that lower level.
Does this become the kind of thing where you talked about how compensation has changed over time, and it really seems like every time the regulators clamp down on one idea, one plan, companies come up with something else. That stock options is a great example of it. Is this going to be another thing where if the bonuses are being lit on the bonuses, they'll figure out some other way to get the money to the executives?
That is a concern of shareholder advocates, because if you're paying for performance and then you kind of tweak that so that there's not as much of an upside or a big payment for performance, the concern is that you'll just pay for anything and you'll have sort of fixed salaries and you'll just be paying for mediocrity or for sluggish performance. I should note, I may have misspoken before, it was PNC that had the extra payment to cushion the blow. Discover had the same reduction but didn't have such a consolation price.
All right, Aaron Lucetti, good stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.